have to hit the record button. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure everybody knows that this is being recorded. So if you do want coaching and I pull you up on the screen, you will be seen, and I do share this. If you want coaching and you don't want it in that setting, please feel free to book a call, michelleburkecoaching.com/connect, and we can always get connected there. So we've talked about the recording. You can raise your hand. Nobody sees you. And only I will see the questions that you put in. So you can use the Q&A and only I can see those questions. So feel free to put those in. We can keep it anonymous as well. And I really encourage you to, whether you're watching here live or if you're on a replay, to really, it's called a workshop, right? I will talk about ideas and teach some, but it really comes down to you doing the work in a way that works for you. So come with an open mind. You might hear something new. And honestly, I could do this class every single month and you would be a new version of yourself and you could still hear something differently. So grab a pen and paper. I'm going to have you do questions and journaling and thinking and implementing, because listen, I love a good podcast. I love a good workshop. I love to listen myself, but it's really when you're doing the active work on yourself that you see the most transformation. So what are we talking about today? We are going to be talking about how you already lead. I think there are a lot of women who don't even realize the amount in which they are already leading in their life. We are going to talk about giving yourself permission to lead in a way that works for you. We are also going to talk about becoming the CEO of your life and what that means for you, how you can show up as the leader in relationships, and how you can be more empowered in your life towards any of your goals. Listen, any of the things that I teach are usually set up in a way that it is a meta skill that I may talk on a specific topic, but you can apply it to so many aspects of your life. So this will probably land differently for everyone, and that is perfect. And again, I think this is so important because there are so many women's voices that are really not being heard, and we need to be the ones to break that cycle. There are so many women that are waiting to be perfect, waiting to have all the boxes checked in order to go on to what their next biggest goals and dreams are. That's what we have to stop doing. I want us all to really embrace living the life that we want to live. So, not looking at all of the external sources for our validation, but knowing that it is within ourselves that we are already our greatest asset. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Let's look at the importance of awareness. And I talk a lot about this in the podcast. For those of you who may not know, It's Your Time podcast. I release a new episode every Thursday, so feel free. There's a lot of free content over there. Awareness around this is so important. And I'll share a story with you why I think it is really so important that we understand what we already think about ourselves. So for years in my corporate job, people would say, Michelle, you're a leader on the team. And it just never felt true to me. And one day I caught myself saying, like, I'm just a rep, with such an attitude of discounting, like whatever it is that I'm contributed to the team. And then I got coaching. I had a coach, and we really looked at that. Here's what I want to ask you. Get your pen and paper. I'm going to give you a couple minutes. I want you to write down, what are your thoughts about how you already lead? Do you see yourself as a leader? And what does being a leader mean? All different kinds. There's all different kinds of leaders, right? Like, look at anybody. If you've been in the corporate world, if you've had a job, if you've had bosses, we all have ideas of what we like and not like in a leader. So I want you to think about what that looks like for you. And I will tell you, it's super fascinating. Martha Beck talks about this. You spot it, you got it. So if there is something that you see in another person that you really admire, you already have it within yourself. It's just a matter of seeing it. And you can do a simple exercise to recognize that. I will get to that exercise, but I want to give you just a couple of minutes. I'm going to, again, say the questions. What are your thoughts about how you already lead? Do you see yourself as a leader? What does being a leader mean? And how do you think that you are showing up as a leader? I'll give you a couple minutes here. And also, if you're watching this on replay, or maybe you're listening as you're driving or taking the dog for a walk, please give yourself the gift of coming back and really looking at what these thoughts are, because our identities, whenever we say I am, that is telling ourselves what we are. So pay attention to those things when you say, like, oh, I am tired, or oh, I'm overweight, or oh, I'm just a rep. I am, and whatever you put after that is so important. And I am not saying that by the end of this workshop, you go from I'm just a rep to like, I'm an amazing leader. No, it might take a little bit of time. You might have to start with, I'm willing to find all of the ways that I already lead in my life. It doesn't have to be that we see the thought and we quickly change it. In fact, when I'm working with clients, this often happens. We almost use the thought work against ourselves, and we think, I need to go to rainbows, daisies, and butterflies, but we don't believe it. And if you don't believe it, it's just not going to stick. So get all of the information out. What are you currently thinking about yourself as a leader? Just going to give you a couple more minutes. Again, please feel free to ask any questions as we go. All right, so once you see all of that, I want you to notice where you look to external sources for validation of what success is. And I also want to remind you that you are the authority, like you are your own inner authority on what is best in your life. And I know for so many women, we have been socialized to maybe not think that's true. We have been socialized to do for others and get the approval from teachers, parents, bosses on what we should or should not be doing with our lives. That's the cycle we want to break. That doesn't mean that you say, to hell with y'all. It just means I'm welcoming my ideas and opinions. My opinions of me matter. Your opinions of you are extremely important. That goes back to the identity. I am. I am what? And when you're thinking about this, I also want you to think about the level of perfection pressure that you put on yourself. Because if we are always looking for the external validation and we think things need to be perfect in order to gain that a girl, then we are holding ourselves back on taking actions and making changes in our life that could be super important. There is no such thing as perfection. It's actually kind of like this lie that we tell ourselves, and it keeps us safe, because if we think we have to wait until it's perfect, then we don't have to do anything at all, right? It just keeps us kind of playing small and really not going after our wildest dreams. So look at where it is that you are really putting the pressure of perfectionism on you. And I also want to mention, like, perfectionism seems like a virtue. I think sometimes people use it in interviews also, like, oh, I think I might have done this actually years ago when I was starting an interview. Like, what do you think is one of your strengths or weaknesses, right? Like, oh, I just want to make sure everything is perfect. That is not a strength. It is looked at like, it seems like it's a virtue, but it really holds us back, right? If we're thinking that we have to be perfect, or if we think I'm a perfectionist, that's another I am statement that you have to really watch out for. And regarding identity is really just like the beliefs and the values that you are most committed to. And I want you to start thinking about how those beliefs and values might actually hold you back. Again, a belief is just a sentence or a thought that we have thought over and over and over, to the point that we think it often feels super factual to us and really true. And it's not. That's what we really want to start uncovering. First, uncover, and then we're going to challenge, like, what if that wasn't true? What could be the opposite? Just get curious. Do all of this work from curiosity and compassion. I remember when I first started coaching, and actually I was coaching a dear friend, and she was talking about the way relationships should go. And we'll get to relationships a little bit later in the workshop. And we just have to be aware and onto ourselves that relationships can look different. They do look different for everyone. It's really based on your beliefs and your values. And then you get to decide if you want to make any changes. Okay. So beliefs are not facts. We get to decide if we want to continue believing our beliefs, or if we start to get curious and we see that they're holding us back, we can start to untangle them and decide what we want to think on purpose. That is the beauty of doing this work. Okay. So that is the first part, the awareness. You really need to get clear on what your thoughts are. And I said I would give you the tool about the You Spot It, You Got It. Martha Beck is another life coach. You can follow her. She's amazing. And I think she was a life coach to Oprah. So she's really amazing, right? You spot it, you got it. So when you see something in someone else that you admire, you already have it within yourself. So I really encourage you to start looking around. First off, get out the sentences that are in alignment with what it is that you like about that person. So for me, I was thinking about a woman, this was years ago, I did this exercise, and I thought, she has her shit together. Like, I listed out 5 things that I thought about her. And then, so you write, she is whatever. And then you go down and you write, I am whatever. And that rewires your brain to start looking for all of the evidence to which will prove you are those qualities. Remember, our brain works with a reticular activating system, which will always find evidence for what we believe to be true in our life. So put it on a mission that really helps you in getting to your next best self. And I do want to just say, I always talk about next best self, kind of, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the selves that we are now. It just means we want to evolve. And that's human nature. We want to evolve. I heard a fun thing on the Peloton. I think it was a run where somebody said, be your favorite self. Doesn't that sound like fun? Be your favorite self. What does that look like? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next topic here. We are talking about permission to be yourself in a way that works for you. And this I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on, but I wanted to give you this information as a tool or a resource for you to maybe even go and do some extra research and learning on it if you're interested. Human design. It is so fascinating. And you can go to jovianarchive.com. So it's JOV as in Victor, IAN archive.com. And it's a free link to find out what your human design is. I find human design to really be a permission slip for you to be who you are and get success in a way that works for you. So here's one example. For years, people still tell me all the time, you need to relax. You need to relax. You need to just settle down. Relaxing is not relaxing to me. And what I found was that based on my human design, I'm a generator. It's not relaxing. If I'm relaxed, if I am relaxing, I need to be doing something. I need to be reading a book. I need to be writing content, to be posting. I just have all of this energy. So it makes total sense that relaxing is not relaxing. It's not like I'm doing life wrong. So pay attention to where you feel like you're kind of out of alignment and maybe what people are expecting of you. So it's jovianarchive.com. And there's also this book. It's an amazing book. Understanding Human Design by Karen Curry. I highly recommend it if you're into this. And in the book, it talks about how one of the greatest, I'm going to be quoting this here, one of the greatest sources of pain in life is the disconnect between the self you perceive yourself to be and the authentic self. The greater the distance between the two, the more discordance and pain there is. That is pretty powerful. That goes back to us always looking to be getting validation from the external sources. And those external sources might not line up with what we want in our life. So we just start getting curious. We just start doing this work. And the more you learn about yourself, I am telling you, you will have so much more freedom around creating the life that you want to live on purpose. And just a quick overview. Basically, human design combines ancient and modern beliefs, astrology, chakra, I Ching. It is fascinating. There are 5 human designs. So there's a manifesting generators, projectors, and reflectors. And I'll tell you, I've done some of this work with clients, and it is so fascinating to see how they change the way they approach work. Or even more, like, kind of gives me chills, is one of my clients looked up her daughter's human design and she started parenting in a different way. And she's like, it makes so much sense why we seem to have like this disconnect, because one human design was one way and one human design was another way. And so as a mom, she kind of approached it differently, which is so much of what I love, is the ripple effect that we do this work here. So human design, so much fun. Here's the other thing, you don't have to necessarily buy the book. If you go to the jovianarchive.com website, again, it's free. You need your date of birth, the time of birth, your location, and your name. And then it will spit back what you are. And then you can simply just Google search what those mean. So if you come back as a manifesting generator and there are different like lines, so I'm a 6-2 generator. Tony Robbins and Oprah are also 6-2 generators. I can totally see it. We're right in line. You can just go and Google search whatever your lines are, like what does a human design line 6 mean? You can just do it all for free. And it's just so interesting to look at it. And then it's even more interesting when you look at family members that you live with and how everybody gets along. Okay. We're doing great on time. Let me just make sure there's no questions yet. Okay, perfect. So now let's step into being the CEO of your life. Okay, being a leader can often be uncomfortable. And that doesn't mean we don't do it, right? It's in the discomfort, once we get through it, that we are on the other side and we have grown from it. If you can think about so many hard things you've probably faced in life and you've gotten through it, and most likely it has at some level changed you, or if you haven't gone through it, you might be resisting it. And that could be a whole different, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. That could be a whole nother workshop on how the body knows and the body keeps score. That's another great book. So think about how you have changed through discomfort to come out on the other side to be a new version of yourself. I think we're new versions of ourselves all the time. I know if I listen to a podcast, like I was just rereading the Human Design book, I read it as a different person than I was the first time I read it, because now I just have a different life experience since the first time I read it. So really think about being willing to be uncomfortable. And Brené Brown talks about vulnerability. And she says, being vulnerable to ask for what you want in life. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. And one of my coaches used to always say, and courage feels like shit, right? A lot of times we think we're supposed to have this courageous, like, I can do it and it's amazing. It's not always amazing. Sometimes it takes a lot of self-reflection and a lot of hard work to take the action, to be vulnerable, to ask for what you want in life, just to stop and ask yourself, what do you want in life? We as women are so quick to take care of everybody else and do the things for everybody else. And we think that that's just the way it's supposed to be. It's not necessarily. It is if you want it to be, but it's not in the way that you have just gotten into the habit of it because it's what society tells us. So start questioning when you say, well, that's just the way it is. Is it really? Do you want it differently? Because it can be different. It's just a matter of you actually knowing what you want. That can sometimes be one of the hardest, most challenging questions. What do you want? Knowing that will help you become an even better leader in your life, okay? Once you know that, then you have to start setting the course. Start planning, start executing, start following the plan, what it is that you want, and acting from the things that you want to do, not the things that you think you should do. Did you hear that? Make sure you're acting from the things that you want to do, not from the things that you think you should do. Now, if the things that you think you should do are the things that you want to do, then rock on. But what I don't want is for women to be doing all of these things and then feeling so resentful that I have to be the one to take care of everything. I have to be the one to do the dishes, and I have to be the one to do the garbage, and I have to be the one. Catch yourself when you're saying that. You don't have to be. And knowing that can give you so much power. You can get curious as to why you think you have to be the one. And then you ask yourself, do I like my reasons? Because sometimes we may want to people please, we may want to do things for other people, but you have to know that you are the one that is choosing to do that. Let's use the garbage example, right? That garbage could pile up and pile up and pile up and fall over, and nobody could ever pick it up. You are picking it up because you want to. Like, I see this even in my life. Our bathroom garbage can get so piled up. Mark will put his iced teacups in there, and it sometimes drives me crazy. And I just let it pile up until the point that I'm like, okay, you win. I will empty the garbage. But I know that I am not doing it because I am resentful. I'm doing it because, okay, I've just had enough. So be careful where you tell yourself that you have to do things, because that often feels very victim mentality. It's really understanding that you do have a choice. It's so important. It's so much more empowering to know that you are the one that is choosing, and you get to decide if you like your reasons why, keep on going. And if not, start getting curious as to like, how can I maybe change that? So you have to first envision what it looks like to be the CEO of your life. What does that look like? You can take some of the answers from the first question of what you think a good leader is, and you can incorporate it into this. So what do you envision? How can you start planning? How will you execute? And then, and I think so many people forget this step, reflection. We need to look at what is working in our lives. A lot of times our brain, all the time, our brain wants to tell us all of the things that we're doing wrong in life. So we talk about, like, at the end of the night, for example, oh, I forgot to do that. I didn't do that. I have to do this tomorrow. I have to do that. It's just like, nothing's ever enough kind of a mindset. What I want to suggest is that you start reflecting first on what worked. And you can implement this any way that works for you. So if you want to do it at the end of each day, if that seems like a little bit too much to start with, maybe the end of each week. If that seems like a little bit too much to get started with, how about just at the end of each month? Just give yourself 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a whole day process, and look at, like, what worked this month or today or yesterday? What worked? Okay. And now, like, look at what didn't work. And you can just get curious, like, how would I change that for the next time? As opposed to just constantly always telling yourself what didn't work. Okay. That is the default thinking. What we're doing here, what we do in the coaching program, is thinking on purpose and deciding in a way that works for us, not just being victim to, like, the default thinking, that we think on purpose, which means that we need to give ourselves credit for the things that we are doing right in our life. And if you sit down and you think, I don't really think there was anything, do not allow your brain to tell you that. There is always something that is working for you. Get curious. If you were going to take a guess, what would you put down? Because here's the thing. A lot of times our brain wants to tell us, I don't know. That's just a safety mechanism. Because what happens when you're asked a question and you're like, oh, I don't know, kind of stops it, right? Kind of blocks it. Like, I don't know. You might not know. But what if you got curious? Just what if I was to take a guess? And again, it doesn't have to be from a pressure thing. Maybe you truly don't know, but then start to untangle that and ask yourself, okay, if I did have an idea, what do I think the answer would be? So that, again, you come from curiosity. You can learn so much if you come to your life looking at other people with curiosity. A lot of times we like to look at other people with judgment, and we a lot of times like to judge ourselves. Let's just twist that. Let's just make it more curious, because from there we can learn so much and then decide, okay, do I want to keep thinking that? Do I want to keep doing that? What am I going to do? Let's move on. It's so important. And if you don't already have it, if you go to michelleburkecoaching.com/my time, there's a planner that I have developed so you can work on daily goals, monthly goals, annual goals, really just use it in a way that works for you. I often will take other people's planners, and in the past, I've like taken a little piece of that and taken a little piece of that. You just have to be willing to try it. And then you have to be willing to not judge yourself if you don't love it all and you don't use it all. Like, that's okay. It's not meant for you to like have to do it a certain way all the time. It is meant as a tool to help you in a way that works for you. If you haven't already figured out all of the work I do with you here and with the clients I work with, it's really finding what works for you. When you're listening to a podcast, and I'm not even just talking about myself, when you read a book, when you're listening to a podcast, when you're taking a course, take what works and you leave what doesn't, and then you move on. And you might have an opportunity where you start with a book and you don't finish it. That's fine. You just know that you have always come and received exactly what you need. And then you can drop the judgment of, oh, I should have finished that book, right? It's crazy, some of the things that we do to ourselves. No, you got what you needed. Now let's go ahead and move on. Speaking of moving on, got on a little tangent there. Okay, let's talk about one of my most favorite books, actually, that I for sure finished reading and have reread, and I have given it to clients, and I'm actually talking on a panel discussion. It's going to be so much fun. It's a global meeting in March, and listen to this. I didn't even think I was going to be talking about it here, but since it's coming out of my mouth, I've gone from the thought, I'm just a rep, discounting, right? To, I'm going to be a panel speaker at a global employee resource group meeting for the world's largest medical device company, and I am going to be speaking on leadership. It's amazing. I am telling you, this work is transformational. And I want you to also just take a moment here before I get into the book, because this brings up another point. I want you to think about how you show up differently, believing I am a leader. When you say that, think about how you feel. Now, you may or may not be at a point where you actually believe that. So what if you say, I am open to being willing to find all the ways I really lead? Think about how that feels versus something like, I'm just a rep, right? When I think I'm a leader, I am going to show up in every situation in a way that I bring energy that is more of a leadership energy versus I'm just a rep. Think about that. Think about how you feel when you tell yourself, I am anything. When you tell yourself, I am tired, and you feel drained, are you really tired? Like, you're telling your brain you're tired. But what if I said, hey, I'm just going to use Oprah again, since I talked about it earlier. Hey, Oprah's coming over to your house in like 10 minutes. Are you going to still be like, oh, I am tired? Or are you going to be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Let me go get my hair done. Think about it. What you say is important, because what you tell yourself, the thought, the sentence, that is what generates a feeling. And then when you're feeling, you're taking action. We always take action because we think that it's going to make us feel a certain way, or because we do feel a certain way. So the think, feel, do cycle is so important. Think about how you feel once you say, I am, whatever that is. Okay. All right. Let's move on to this next book, because I do think it's so important as we're moving into being more leaders in our own lives. And listen, some of you may have thought, like, the title, Leadership and Self-Empowerment, maybe you thought that I was going to be talking about you leading others. You really can't lead others until you lead yourself. Start with numero uno. And then again, it's a meta skill. Once you know what's important to yourself, how you're showing up as a leader in your life, the ripple effect is amazing, and you will show up as a leader for everyone else in just a whole different way. So the next book that I want to talk about, Atomic Habits, James Clear. Such a good book. I love it. In fact, if you go to, I think it's jamesclear.com, you can sign up for his free newsletter that he sends. It is awesome. He has so much great information. But what he talks about in here, one of the things that he talks about a lot of things, but I wanted to talk about the 3 layers of behavior change. He talks about outcome-based habits, outcomes, which are basically like changing the results. So maybe you say that you want to lose weight. Okay. There are processes, which are basically new routines. So maybe you start working out. And then there's identity shifts, and that's changing your beliefs or your worldviews. So you would go from thinking that, oh, I need to lose weight, and then you maybe start working out. But where he says you have true change, like lasting change, is in the identity circle. So it's kind of like a process, or excuse me, outcome, process, identity. Like, where do you get the most impact? It's changing the identity. I am an athlete. Right? Because if you're saying I am an athlete, then what are the processes that you're going to be doing to get those outcomes, right? Like, you need to change your identity and the behaviors will then follow. Think about someone who says, like, I don't know, the example he uses in the book is smoking. So if somebody is offered a cigarette and maybe they are talking about how they're trying to not smoke anymore, that's going to come off one way, as opposed to somebody saying, no, I'm not a smoker. Like, just doesn't even cross your mind, right? There's a whole different level of certainty when you have that identity and when you know I am a leader. Okay. So think about what that looks like. Again, that goes back to like, how do you show up? If you're telling yourself I am a leader, then how are you showing up? Which brings us to how are you showing up in your relationships? Okay. Who do you want to be in your relationships? What is the energy that you are bringing? Because we talked about this a little bit earlier. A lot of times we have these relationships in our lives where we think that we are the victim. It might be that our boss is doing something to us, or our mom has done something to us, or our partner is not treating us the way that we should. It's such a blaming, resentful, whatever the feeling is that you have when you're telling yourself those stories, it usually doesn't encourage you to take action to make changes, right? Whenever we're coming from the victim mentality, then we are much less likely to make the changes that we want to, as opposed to knowing what it is that we want and where it is that we are going to make any changes, right? So what I suggest is not trying to change them, because let me tell you, if and when I ever figure that out, I will share it. I will probably make millions of dollars, multi-millions of dollars, but I have yet to figure out, and all of the people that I listen to for learning, they too have not quite figured out how to change anybody else. We have to start with ourselves. And I will tell you, especially if you're just starting this work, that can be a little bit of a pill to swallow, I guess you might say. But it is also the best news, because we are in charge of ourselves. So if we start changing ourselves, you will be amazed at how relationships change. I forget who actually says this. Excuse me, my nose, my allergies are so crazy. I want to say maybe it's Marianne Williamson. Somebody says you need 2 people to argue, right? So like, if you just think of a tug of war, right? If you're tugging, if you just let the rope go, it releases all of the pressure. Think about how you want to change. This does not mean that you just give in to everything that everybody wants and you just do whatever they say. That's the opposite of what I'm talking about, okay? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying give yourself the opportunity to think about how you want to show up in a way that works for you, as opposed to just doing default thinking of this is the way it's always been. It doesn't always have to be that way. Okay. Let me just get my notes here. And here's the other thing. If you go back to the start of the class and you have more awareness as to what it is that you're thinking, then you can decide, okay, what are some of the small steps that I want to start making changes in? Darren Hardy talks about this. I think actually Darren Hardy is in The Compound Effect, and James Clear is Atomic Habits. They both kind of speak to this, the idea that we do not need to make these huge leaping changes all at once. It can be the compound effect, 1% change over time. Darren Hardy also has a TED Talk that you can Google search where he talks about this, that if you have a plane, for example, that's going from point A to point B, and it's a 6-hour flight, and if that flight is just 1% off course for the entirety of the 6 hours, it's not going to end up at B, right? It's going to end up over here at like C. So we can make significant changes in our lives with small daily actions. And maybe that goes back to the atomic habits, right? What are the small things that you will do to make changes in your life once you start believing I am a leader? I am willing to see all the ways that I am a leader. It's really, what are you thinking? How do you feel? And then what actions are you going to take when you're moving through? And, one other thing I want to see, it's a good thing I don't have slides because things just come up. And if you have questions, put them in there. If you're watching it on replay, which I did get some feedback, I think there's going to be a lot of people watching on replay because of the timing, which I might move later at the next class. So stay tuned. I want you to think about how we oftentimes think that other people make us feel a certain way. And we'll say like, oh, they made me so angry or whatever it is. And then I want you to think about, because I've been noticing this for myself. Listen, all of the stuff that I teach here or talk about, it's because I have either gone through it or I am going through it. So I don't teach anything that I haven't done for sure. But I've noticed, and I want you to think about this for you, when we tell ourselves like other people need to change because they make me feel angry or whatever it might be, your flavor of that sentence. So Mark, for example, will tell me every day, you look great. Oh, you look beautiful. Like before I go out to work, he'll say something along those lines. And it is very nice, except for I do not always believe it. And so I, in my brain, respond back. I don't say this to him, and he doesn't watch the replay, so it's okay if I share it. He's just saying that, right? Think about times like if you don't feel it and think it yourself, then it doesn't always land. They can say you look amazing and beautiful and whatever, but if you don't believe it, then you don't accept it, you don't receive it. Okay, so just think about that when you catch yourself. Again, this is the beauty of this stuff, right? We have not been, I think most people have not been socialized to really kind of think on purpose and be super mindful, especially with social media. We're scrolling, it's just like everything goes by and we just take in everything as it comes and we react. I want us to be more intentional with your life. Be intentional with where you're putting your attention. It is everything, okay? All right, sorry, got on a little tangent. Not shocking at all. Okay. Empathy and leadership. We hear about this a lot. I mean, I hear about it in my corporate job. It's so important. But what does it mean for you to be empathetic with yourself? Like, what would that mean for you to come to the relationship that you have with yourself, you as a leader of yourself, with compassion? Think about that. Again, I think there are a lot of us that judge ourselves harshly. I will tell you, when I first started coaching, and I had some amazing women that I was coaching, and at first I was like, wow, it's really not just me. The way we talk to ourselves is stunning. And it is mostly, sometimes it's useful, but I think when we're on default thinking, it's not always super useful. So we need to like take control of that. Take control of ourselves, look at what we're thinking, decide if we want to continue thinking it. So we observe it and then we resolve it. Do we want to keep thinking this? All right, which brings us to personal empowerment as you take on new goals. So empowerment allows you to overcome obstacles in your life and develop yourself along the way, right? To live to your fullest potential. And taking control of your life, making positive decisions, right? This is what we're just talking about. What are the useful decisions that you want to make in your life? And how do you decide those decisions? The answer to that is knowing what it is that you actually want, knowing how you want to show up in the relationship with yourself and the relationship with others. And what does that look like? Based on what you want, not what you think it should be. I saw this example when I was doing a presentation at work, and there was a woman who was talking about how she was having some conflict in her team because she had a baby. So success looked like one thing in her life before the baby, and now success looks like a different thing in her life with the baby. That's perfect. Also, we can define what success means for us today, or what leadership means for you today, or how you want to show up today. And it can be different next week, tomorrow, next year. It's a spiral of growth. Hopefully, it doesn't stay the same. I don't think anybody really stays the same necessarily. I kind of feel like you either move forward or you're kind of going backwards, right? Like it might feel like you're stuck, but if you are on the spiral of growth, success is going to look different for you in the season of whatever your life has going on. And that is perfect. How do you define success? That is the question. Not how does everybody else define success? How do you define yourself as a leader? How do you define success? Start finding the evidence for where all of that is true. Okay. And also knowing that everything in your life is a choice. It doesn't always feel that way. This was a quote when I first went to coach training that was on my specific seat. And it has stuck with me because I feel like it is so empowering to know everything in life is a choice, even if it doesn't feel like it. And you can decide to choose again. So a lot of times I give myself some grace because I might react in a certain way initially, and then I can, okay, take it in. Is this how I want to show up? Is this what I want to think, right? Our brain is always going to have initial thoughts. Our job is to decide if we want to actually listen to our brain, if we want to actually keep thinking those thoughts, or do we want to have a different option? There are infinite options. There are so many different ways to look at things. You just have to be willing to be open to seeing it. And a lot of times that's what the coaching program is, right? It is another set of eyes and ears to say, hey, do you know that this is what you just said? And this is what you're creating. But if you wanted to think about it this way, there is another option, right? It's the ability to be shown your blind spots, because we do think, right? We go through life kind of with our own blinders and we see what it is that we want to see. That's human. That's called being human. That's a perfect thing. But if we want to make the changes, we often need people to show us that there are other possibilities. That is where the transformation takes place. It's everything. Okay, so taking control of your life, making positive decisions based on what it is that you want, knowing that everything is a choice and that we want to convert intention into action, right? So you have the ideas of what success is, you have the ideas of what you are as a leader, who you are as a leader, how you are showing up, you have the intention. Now put it into action. And this is where I see many women getting stuck, because we think that we need confidence in order to start making these changes. No. That is not true. Dan Sullivan talks about this, the 4 C's. You need commitment. So you need the commitment to find, in this example, all of the ways that you are a leader, showing up as a leader. Are you committed to doing that work? Then you need to have the courage to actually do the work. And remember, courage doesn't always feel like rainbows, daisies, and butterflies, and that's okay. But we just need to have the courage to get started. And then as you get started, you start building your capabilities. And the more you do, guess what? The more confidence you feel. So confidence comes from the doing. It comes after the doing. We do not need to sit around. This goes back to where we started the class, right? We're kind of wrapping it up here because we started talking about the importance of this is because women's voices are not being heard. Because a lot of times we think that we need to sit around and wait for perfection or wait for somebody else to give us approval in order to start living our lives. Like, it sounds silly when we say it out loud, right? But it's so true. And there's so many women that do this. I have done it myself. And there are still times when I'm like, hey, catching myself. Is that really what I want to do? Am I doing that for me, or am I doing it for that person? Or maybe I'm doing it for that person because I want to, right? Like, get clear on what that all looks like. don't wait around to feel confident. And there could be a hack. Okay. You could come up with a thought that maybe made you feel confident, like, I am committed to doing this. And then maybe you feel either committed or determined or confident. But I don't want you to even have to do that. I want you to just be willing to not feel confident and to start taking action. Are you committed? Do you have courage? Start doing, building your capabilities, and then the confidence will come. And this also kind of plays into what I was talking about, how you are a different person, right? So think about who you would be if you decided to make a decision and then you went from A to B and then B to C and C to D. Like, I'm not saying go from A to Z, I'm saying steps at a time along the way. Think about that person, A, B, C, D, E, F. I won't do the whole alphabet. I could sing for you, but I'll spare you. Versus somebody who's sitting here at A, waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting until they can figure out how to get to Z. First person, it's going to be there way faster. Make a decision, learn from it, move on. Make a decision, learn from it, move on. That will change your life. Okay. I think that is about the end of the things that I needed to share with you. Let me just make sure there's no other questions. Again, I understand if you don't want to be called up here for coaching, it is being recorded. Like I said, if you do have questions, that is anonymous and I do not have to say the name of whoever it is. But if you want to just get on a call with me, it's a no-cost call to go over any questions maybe that you had from the course, or if you maybe do want to get some coaching or even learn about the coaching program. I have a 6-month coaching program. It's michelleburkecoaching.com/connect, and we can get on a call there. I promise you, you will leave with some sort of transformation. Like, it will not be a waste of your time. I'm all about making sure we have good use of our time, ladies. Okay. Well, I don't see any questions here. I just want to say thank you to those who came live. I will have the recording sent out within, for sure, 24 to 48 hours. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always also email me, contact@michelleburkecoaching, or DM me on any of the socials. All right. I hope you all have a great Sunday fun day, and I will see you soon. Take care.